The spaceship USS Liberty moved slowly through the dark between stars. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge and watched the screens that showed empty space ahead. His ship carried 40 people who needed to get to the medical colony on a planet called Kepler 442b. Most were sick people going for treatment that they could not get on Earth. Amy Collins was 12 years old and sat next to her guardian Dr. Lisa Hayes in the passenger area. Amy had been sick since she was born with something wrong in her blood that made her very weak. The doctors on Earth said they could not help her, but the alien doctors on Kepler 442b might be able to fix what was wrong. Dr. Hayes had spent 2 years getting permission to take Amy to the alien medical world. Amy looked out the small window at the stars and wondered what the alien doctors would be like. She had never seen a real alien before. Dr. Hayes had shown her pictures, but Amy still felt scared and excited at the same time. The medicine she took every day made her feel sick, but Dr. Hayes said she had to keep taking it until they reached the alien hospital. Captain Morrison had been flying ships between Earth and the alien worlds for 15 years. He knew the space roads well and had all the right papers to travel through alien territory. The Zephyrian aliens controlled this part of space, and they were known to be fair, but very strict about their rules. Morrison had flown through their space many times before, without any problems. The ship's computer made a beeping sound. Morrison looked at his screens and saw 3 alien ships coming toward them fast. The ships were long and thin, like silver needles with blue lights running along their sides. Morrison knew these were Zephyrian patrol ships. He pressed a button to talk to them. "This is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty, requesting permission to continue through Zephyrian space," he said into his microphone. "We have proper travel permits and are carrying medical passengers to Kepler 442b. The alien voice that answered sounded like music mixed with the sound of breaking glass. The ship's computer changed the alien words into English. "Human vessel, you will stop engines and prepare for boarding. You are suspected of illegal entry into Zephyrian sovereign territory." Morrison felt his stomach drop. There must be some mistake. "We have valid transit permits issued by the Zephyrian Trade Authority on Alpha Station. Your permits are false documents. Prepare for boarding, or we will disable your ship." Morrison had no choice. He turned off the engines and told his crew to prepare for the alien boarding party. He went to the passenger area to warn everyone what was happening. When he told Dr. Hayes about the permit problem, she looked very worried. "Amy needs to get to the medical facility within the next few days," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "Her condition is getting worse, and the Earth medicines are not working anymore." The alien ships attached themselves to the USS Liberty like metal spiders. Amy watched through the window as strange figures in blue uniforms floated between the ships. She had never seen real aliens before, and these looked nothing like the pictures Dr. Hayes had shown her. They were tall and thin with skin that looked like blue crystal. Their faces had no nose or mouth that Amy could see, but they had large dark eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. The airlocks opened, and 6 Aryan officers came onto the human ship. Their leader was taller than the others and had more decorations on his uniform. When he spoke, the computer voice said his name was Commander Vexka. "All humans will gather in the main passenger area for processing," Commander Vexka announced. His voice through the computer sounded cold and official. "You are being detained for violation of Zephyrian territorial laws." Captain Morrison tried to show the commander their travel documents, but Vexka barely looked at them. "These permits are fabricated," he said. "The security codes are outdated, and the issuing authority's signatures are false. But we got these permits from your own people on Alpha Station just 2 weeks ago," Morrison protested. "Impossible. No permits for this route have been issued to human vessels in the past month. You will all be transferred to our judicial station for proper legal processing." Dr. Hayes stood up with Amy beside her. "Commander, this child is seriously ill and needs medical treatment. She cannot be delayed in reaching the medical facility on Kepler 44 to be commander. Vexka looked at Amy for the first time. His large dark eyes studied her pale face and thin body. Human medical needs are not relevant to legal processing. The child will receive basic life support during detention, like all other prisoners. She needs special medicine and food, Dr. Hayes said desperately. Without proper treatment, her condition will get much worse. That is not our concern. Gather your personal items. You have 10 minutes before transfer. Amy felt scared as she watched the adults argue. She did not understand what was happening, but she could tell that Dr. Hayes was very worried. The alien commander looked scary with his crystal blue skin and glowing eyes. Amy had hoped that aliens would be friendly, but this one seemed angry and cold. The Zephyrian officers used devices that looked like silver ropes to tie the humans together in a long line. Amy held Dr. Hayes' hand tightly as they were led through the connecting tunnel to the alien ship. The inside of the Zephyrian vessel was all white and curved like the inside of an egg. Strange music played quietly from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like metal and flowers. Amy and the other humans were put into a large white room with no windows. The walls glowed with soft light, and the floor felt warm under their feet. There were no chairs or beds, just empty white space. Commander Vexka stood in the doorway and spoke to them one last time. You will remain here during transport to the judicial station. You will be provided with basic atmospheric requirements for your species. Legal processing will begin upon arrival at Nexus Prime. The door closed, and Amy heard a clicking sound as it locked. She looked around at the 40 scared faces of her fellow passengers. Captain Morrison was trying to comfort his crew, while other passengers whispered nervously among themselves. Dr. Hayes knelt down beside Amy and checked her pulse. How do you feel, sweetheart? Dr. Hayes asked. I'm okay, but I'm getting hungry, Amy said. When will they give us food? Dr. Hayes did not answer, but Amy saw the worried look in her eyes. Amy did not know that they were about to begin the longest and most frightening journey of her young life. 3 weeks had passed since Amy and the other humans were taken prisoner by the Zephyrian patrol ships. Amy had grown much weaker during their time in the detention. Cells on the space station called Nexus Prime. The aliens had given them water and some kind of gray paste that they said was food, but it tasted terrible and did not help Amy feel better. Dr. Hayes had asked the guards many times for Amy's special medicine, but they always said the same thing. Medical requests had to be approved by the court during legal processing. Amy's skin had become even more pale, and she felt tired all the time. Sometimes she had trouble standing up without help. The other prisoners were angry about how they were being treated. Captain Morrison had demanded to speak with someone in charge, but the guards ignored him. The ship's engineer, Ben Murphy, kept saying the Zephyrians had no right to hold them like criminals. The passengers who were sick and going for medical treatment were getting worse without their medicines. The detention cells were small white rooms with bright lights that never turned off. Each room held for humans and had no furniture except for flat sleeping areas that came out of the walls. The air was always cold and smelled like the inside of a machine. Amy shared her cell with Dr. Hayes and 2 women named Carol Davis and Ruth Green, who were also going to the alien medical facility. On the morning of the 21st day, a group of Zephyrian guards came to get all the humans. Amy could barely walk, and Dr. Hayes had to help her stand up. The guards led them through long white corridors filled with the strange flower metal smell that all Zephyrian buildings seemed to have. They entered the largest room Amy had ever seen. The ceiling was so high she could not see the top, and the walls curved up like the inside of a giant crystal cave. Hundreds of Zephyrian citizens sat in rows of seats that hung in the air without any support Amy could see. Their crystal blue skin reflected light in patterns that changed colors as Amy watched. In the center of the huge room was a platform where all the humans were told to stand. High above them was another platform where a single Zephyrian sat behind what looked like a desk made of blue glass. This had to be the judge Dr. Hayes had told Amy about. The judge was bigger than the other Zephyrians Amy had seen. His crystal skin was darker blue and seemed to glow with its own light when he moved. His head, the light patterns on his skin changed in ways that reminded Amy of watching clouds move across the sky. His large dark eyes looked down at the humans with an expression Amy could not understand. A Zephyrian in a red uniform stood up and began speaking in the musical glass-breaking language of his people. The computers around the room changed his words into English, but the translation was confusing and hard to follow. Amy heard words like territorial violation and fraudulent documentation and imprisonment penalty. But she did not understand what most of it meant. Dr. Hayes whispered to Amy that the Zephyrian in red was the prosecutor who was trying to prove the humans had broken the law. Another Zephyrian in a blue uniform was supposed to be their defense lawyer, but he looked nervous and kept looking through papers with a worried expression. The trial moved very slowly. Each time someone spoke, they had to wait for the computer to translate between human English and the Zephyrian language. Sometimes the translation did not make sense, and they had to repeat things several times. Amy noticed that when Zephyrians spoke to each other, their skin patterns changed quickly, but when they spoke to humans, their skin stayed the same color. Captain Morrison was called forward to answer questions about the ship's travel permits. He tried to explain how they had gotten the documents from the Zephyrian Trade Authority, but the prosecutor kept saying the permits were fake. Morrison became frustrated and raised his voice, but the judge's skin patterns shifted to dark red colors, and Morrison quickly became quiet again. Amy felt dizzy and had trouble paying attention to what was happening. The gray paste they had been eating for 3 weeks was not real food, and her body was getting weaker every day. Dr. Hayes kept checking Amy's pulse and looking worried. Sometimes Amy caught the judge looking down at her with his strange glowing eyes. On the second day of the trial, Dr. Hayes was allowed to speak. She tried to explain about Amy's medical condition and how they needed to get to the alien doctors on Kepler 4 for to be. She used big medical words that the computer had trouble translating. The prosecutor objected several times and said human medical problems were not important to the legal case. Your Honor, Dr. Hayes said, looking up at the judge, this child will die if she does not receive proper medical treatment soon. We are not criminals, we are just trying to save her life. The judge's skin patterns shifted to lighter blue colors as he listened. He asked questions about human biology that Dr. Hayes tried to answer. Amy could tell that the judge was curious about humans, but she also sensed that he did not really understand how different human bodies were from Zephyrian bodies. The Zephyrians in the audience seats made soft musical sounds when Dr. Hayes talked about Amy's sickness. Their skin patterns changed to colors that Dr. Hayes later told Amy meant sympathy or concern, but the prosecutor kept saying that medical issues could not change. The fact that the humans had entered Zephyrian space illegally. By the 4th day of the trial, Amy was having trouble staying awake. She had to lean against Dr. Hayes to keep from falling down. Her hands shook and she felt cold, even though the courtroom was warm. The other humans looked worried when they saw how sick she was getting. The prosecutor was reading a long list of all the laws the humans had supposedly broken. His voice went on and on through the computer. Translation about navigation codes and territorial boundaries and proper documentation procedures. Amy tried to listen, but the words all seemed to blend together. She looked up at the judge and saw that he was watching her instead of listening to the prosecutor. His large dark eyes seemed to glow brighter as he studied her pale face and shaking hands. Amy wondered what he was thinking about. The courtroom was filled with the sound of the prosecutor's voice and the humming of the translation computers. Hundreds of Zephyrian citizens watched from their floating seats with skin patterns that shifted like slow lightning. The air smelled like flowers and metal and something else Amy could not identify. Amy felt her stomach make a loud rumbling sound. She had not eaten anything except the terrible gray paste for so long that she had almost forgotten what real food tasted like. She remembered her mother's cooking and the meals Dr. Hayes used to make for her before they left Earth. Her body ached with hunger and weakness. The prosecutor finished reading his list and sat down. The courtroom became quiet, except for the humming of machines and the soft musical sounds the Zephyrians made when they were thinking. The judge's skin patterns shifted to new colors as he prepared to speak. Amy felt dizzy and weak, but she also felt something else. She felt angry that these aliens were keeping her from getting the medical help she needed. She felt frustrated that no one seemed to care that she was sick and getting worse every day. Most of all, she felt hungry in a way that went deeper than just wanting food. As the judge began to speak, Amy made a decision that would change everything. The judge was about to announce something important when Amy's voice cut through the silence of the great courtroom. She did not plan to speak, and she did not ask permission. The words just came out of her because she could not hold them back anymore. "Your Honor," Amy said in her weak but clear voice, "I'm really hungry." Every sound in the massive courtroom stopped. The humming of machines went quiet. The soft musical voices of the Zephyrian citizens fell silent. Even the prosecutor stopped, shuffling his papers. Amy's simple words hung in the air like they had magical power. The judge's crystal skin began changing colors faster than Amy had ever seen before. Waves of blue and silver and gold light moved across his body like water. His large dark eyes focused on Amy with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking into her soul. The computer translation system worked frantically to change Amy's simple English words into the complex Zephyrian language. But something strange happened during the translation. The Zephyrian word for hungry was not just about wanting food. In their language, it meant something much deeper and more serious. "Explain this hunger," the judge said. His voice through the computer sounded different than before. There was something in it that had not been there during the whole trial. It sounded like he really cared about her answer. Dr. Hayes quickly stood up and began explaining Amy's medical condition to the court. She talked about how Amy had been born with genetic problems that made her blood not work properly. She explained how Amy needed special food and medicine to stay alive, and how the gray paste they had been given for 3 weeks was making her sicker. "Human children need different nutrition than adult humans," Dr. Hayes said, looking up at the judge. "Amy's condition makes her needs even more specific. Without proper food and medicine, she could die within days." The Zephyrian citizens in their floating seats began making new musical sounds. Their skin patterns changed to deeper blue colors that seemed to pulse with emotion. Amy noticed that many of them were leaning forward in their seats as if they wanted to hear every word. The prosecutor jumped up and objected loudly. "This child's medical condition has nothing to do with the charges of illegal territorial entry. The court should not be distracted by irrelevant emotional appeals." But something had changed in the judge. His skin patterns continued to shift, through colors Amy had never seen before. He raised one long crystal hand for silence, and the entire courtroom obeyed instantly. "In our law," the judge said slowly, "when hunger is declared in the halls of justice, there are protocols that must be followed. Ancient protocols that supersede normal legal procedures." The prosecutor's skin went pale blue, which Dr. Hayes later told Amy meant surprise and worry. "Your Honor, those laws have not been invoked in thousands of years. They were written for different circumstances. The law does not specify circumstances," the judge replied. "It only requires that genuine need be declared in a formal setting. This child has made such a declaration." Amy did not understand what was happening, but she could feel that something important had changed. The energy in the courtroom felt different. The Zephyrian citizens were making more musical sounds, and their skin patterns were brighter and more active than before. The judge called for a recess and left his high platform. Amy watched him go through a door behind his bench, while wondering what would happen next. Dr. Hayes knelt beside Amy and checked her pulse again. "What did I do?" Amy asked weakly. "I think you might have just saved all of us," Dr. Hayes whispered back. During the recess, the human prisoners were allowed to sit down on the platform. Captain Morrison came over to check on Amy, and she could see that he was worried about how pale and thin she had become. The other passengers gathered around her, and several of them shared water from their containers. Ben Murphy, the ship's engineer, shook his head in amazement. In all my years dealing with aliens, I never saw anything like that. Did you see how their skin colors changed when she spoke? The judge looked like he was having some kind of emotional reaction, said Carol Davis. I didn't know Zephyrians could show emotions like that. Ruth Green, who had been a teacher on Earth before getting sick, sat down next to Amy. Sweetheart, you were very brave to speak up like that. I know you're scared and hungry, but you did something important. Amy leaned against Dr. Hayes and closed her eyes. She felt worse than she had ever felt in her life. Her whole body ached, and she was so hungry that it hurt. But she also felt something else. She felt like maybe these alien people were not as cold and mean as she had thought. After what seemed like hours, the judge returned to his platform. His skin was still changing colors in patterns that looked excited and determined. He carried a large crystal device that projected glowing symbols in the air above his bench. This court has researched the ancient protocols regarding declarations of need, the judge announced. The law is clear and absolute. When any being declares genuine hunger, thirst, or other basic need in the halls of justice, that need must be addressed before any other legal matter can proceed. The prosecutor stood up quickly. Your Honor, with respect, these laws were written for our own people thousands of years ago. They cannot apply to alien species. The law makes no distinction regarding species, the judge replied firmly. It speaks of any being, not any Zephyrian being. The protocols are clear. Amy watched as the judge's skin patterns shifted to bright gold colors. This court orders the immediate provision of proper nutrition for all human defendants. Medical evaluation and care will be provided for any who need it, especially this child. Comfortable quarters will be arranged during the remainder of these proceedings. The courtroom erupted in musical sounds from the Zephyrian citizens. Their skin patterns blazed with colors that looked happy and excited. Amy could tell that many of them approved of the judge's decision, but the judge was not finished. Furthermore, under the right of advocacy provisions of the ancient protocols, this child will be permitted to address the court directly about human needs and customs. She has invoked powers that this court is bound to recognize. Dr. Hayes squeezed Amy's hand and whispered, Do you understand what this means? You get to tell them about us, about what it's like to be human. Amy looked up at the towering figure of the judge, with his glowing crystal skin and large dark eyes. She was still scared, but now she was also hopeful. Maybe these aliens could learn to understand humans better. Maybe she could help them see that humans were not bad people who broke laws on purpose. Can I really talk to them? Amy asked in her small voice. Yes, child, the judge said, and his skin patterns shifted to warm blue colors. You have declared need in the proper way. Now you may help us understand what humans need to survive and thrive. This court is listening. Amy felt stronger than she had in weeks, even though her body was still weak and hungry. She had found her voice in this strange alien courtroom, and somehow that voice had changed everything. Now she had to figure out what to say to help these crystal people understand what it meant to be human. The trial would continue, but now it would be different. Now it would be about more than laws and permits and territorial violations. Now it would be about understanding between two very different kinds of people who shared the same galaxy. The next morning, Amy woke up in a room that was completely different from the cold, white detention cell where she had spent 3 weeks. This room had soft blue walls that glowed gently and a real bed with clean sheets that smelled like flowers. There was even a window that showed the stars outside the space station. Dr. Hayes was sitting in a chair next to the bed, reading from a device that looked like a flat piece of crystal. When she saw Amy wake up, she smiled bigger than Amy had seen her smile in a long time. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Better," Amy said, and realized it was true. Different. On a table next to the bed was a tray of food that actually looked like food instead of gray paste. There were fruits that looked almost like earth apples, but were purple and tasted sweet, like candy. There was bread that was blue, but felt soft and warm. There was even something that tasted like chicken, but was made from plants that grew on the Zephyrian home world. The judge ordered this special food to be prepared for human biology, Dr. Hayes explained. Their food scientists worked all night to create meals that would help you get stronger. Amy ate slowly and felt energy returning to her body for the first time in weeks. The purple fruits made her feel less tired, and the blue bread stopped the constant ache in her stomach. She was still weak, but now she felt like she might actually get better. "What happened after I spoke yesterday?" Amy asked. Dr. Hayes sat on the edge of the bed and took Amy's hand. "You did something amazing. You invoked an ancient Zephyrian law that even most Zephyrians had forgotten about." The judge spent hours researching legal databases that go back thousands of years. She explained how the Declaration of Need was one of the oldest laws in Zephyrian society. Long ago, when their people lived in crystal caves and had to survive harsh conditions, they created a law that said helping people in need was more important than any other legal matter. When you said you were hungry in their courtroom, you accidentally triggered this ancient law, Dr. Hayes said. Now they have to take care of all of us properly, and they have to listen to what you have to say about human needs. Amy thought about this while she ate more of the strange but delicious alien food. So they're not mean people. They were just following their rules. I think that's exactly right. Their society is very organized, and they follow rules very carefully. But they had never thought about how their rules might affect humans who have different needs than they do. Later that morning, guards came to escort Amy and Dr. Hayes back to the courtroom. But these guards were different from before. They wore softer blue uniforms instead of hard armor, and they spoke politely to the humans. One of them even asked Amy how she was feeling, and seemed genuinely interested in her answer. The courtroom looked the same, but felt completely different. The Zephyrian citizens in their floating seats were making musical sounds that seemed welcoming instead of cold. Their skin patterns were brighter and more active, like they were excited about something. Judge Corthane's skin was glowing with warm gold colors when Amy and the other humans took their places on the platform. He looked down at Amy with his large dark eyes, and she thought she saw something like kindness in them. "Young human Amy Collins," the judge said formally, "you have invoked the ancient right of advocacy. You may now address this court about the needs and customs of your people. Help us understand what we must know to treat humans with proper justice." Amy felt scared standing in front of hundreds of alien people, but she also felt important. Dr. Hayes had told her that what she said could change how Zephyrians treated humans forever. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "I'm just a kid," Amy said in her clear voice, "but I know what it feels like to be scared and far from home, and not understand what's happening." She talked about her journey from Earth, and how excited she had been to visit alien worlds. She explained how she had hoped that aliens would be friendly and helpful, since humans and Zephyrians were supposed to be allies. "When your people arrested us, I didn't understand why," Amy continued. "We had the right papers, and we weren't trying to hurt anyone. We just wanted to get to the doctors who could help me get better." The judge listened carefully and asked questions about human customs and biology. Amy found herself explaining things she had never thought about before, like how human children need their parents or guardians to feel safe, and how being hungry makes humans feel weak and scared. "Humans are social creatures," Amy said, using words Dr. Hayes had taught her. "We need to be with other humans, and we need to feel like we belong somewhere. When you separated us from our ship and put us in those white rooms, we felt lost and alone." The Zephyrian citizens made soft musical sounds, and their skin patterns shifted to blue colors that Dr. Hayes later said meant understanding and sympathy. Amy realized that these aliens were learning about humans for the first time, and they seemed to want to understand. Amy talked about her sickness and how scared she felt about dying so young. She explained how Dr. Hayes had worked for years to get permission to bring her to the alien medical facility, and how important it was for humans to have hope when they were facing difficult times. Hope is very important to humans, Amy said. When we don't have hope, we can get sick in our minds as well as our bodies. The hope of getting better is what kept me strong during the journey from Earth. Judge Corthane's skin patterns became very complex, with multiple colors swirling together. This hope that you speak of, it is necessary for human health. Yes, sir, Amy replied. Humans need to believe that things can get better and that other people care about what happens to them. The prosecutor tried several times to interrupt and return the trial to legal matters, but the judge would not allow it. This court is learning essential information about proper treatment of human beings, he said firmly. These customs and needs must be understood before legal justice can be properly administered. Amy found herself talking about things she had never put into words before. She spoke about how humans show love by taking care of each other and how they feel happy when they help others who are in need. She explained how human children learn by watching adults and how important it is for adults to set good examples. Dr. Hayes has taken care of me since my parents died, Amy said, and her voice got quieter. She didn't have to do that, but she chose to, because humans believe in helping people who need help. That's why we were trying to get to your medical facility, not because we wanted to break your laws. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the soft humming of machines. Amy could see that her words were having an effect on the Zephyrian citizens. Many of them had skin patterns that looked like Earth. Aurora lights with gentle waves of color moving across their crystal bodies. Judge Corthane stood up on his high platform, and his skin blazed with bright golden light. This court has learned much today about the nature of human beings. We have discovered that our legal procedures, which serve our people well, may cause suffering for beings with different needs and customs. He looked directly at Amy with an expression that seemed almost fatherly. Young advocate, your words have shown us that true justice requires understanding, not just law. We must learn how to treat all beings with wisdom and compassion. Amy felt proud and tired at the same time. She had done something important by helping these aliens understand humans better. But she also felt the weight of responsibility for all the humans who might come after her. She hoped she had said the right things to make their lives easier and safer. The judge announced that the court would reassess again while he considered everything Amy had told them. As the humans were led back to their comfortable new quarters, Amy felt hopeful for the first time since their arrest. Maybe her simple words about being hungry had started something bigger than she could have imagined. 2 days later, Judge Corthane called everyone back to the great courtroom for his final decision. Amy felt much stronger after eating real food and sleeping in a comfortable bed. The Zephyrian doctors had even given her new medicine that worked better than anything she had tried on Earth. The judge's crystal skin was glowing with steady, gold light as he looked down at the humans on the platform below. The hundreds of Zephyrian citizens in their floating seats were completely quiet as they waited to hear what he would say. This court has spent much time considering the evidence and the testimony provided by the human advocate Amy Collins. Judge Corthane began. We have learned that our understanding of justice must expand to include wisdom about other species and their needs. Amy held Dr. Hayes' hand tightly as the judge continued speaking. His voice through the translation computer sounded formal, but also kind in a way that had not been there at the beginning of the trial. The charges against these humans are hereby dismissed, the judge announced. Furthermore, this court finds that their detention was a violation of the ancient humanitarian protocols that protect travelers in need, regardless of their species or origin. The courtroom erupted in musical sounds from the Zephyrian citizens. Their skin patterns blazed with bright happy colors like a celebration made of living light. Captain Morrison and his crew smiled for the first time in weeks, and several of the passengers began crying with relief. But Judge Corthane was not finished with his announcement. This case has revealed serious problems with how our society treats alien visitors. We have been so focused on following our laws exactly that we forgot the spirit of compassion that originally inspired those laws. He explained that Amy's case would be used to create new legal precedents that would be called the Collins Doctrine. From now on, all Zephyrian courts would have to consider the biological and cultural needs of alien defendants. No one could be held in conditions that would harm their health, and every being would have the right to declare need in legal settings. Moreover, the judge continued, this court orders full reparations for the suffering these humans endured during their improper detention. They will be provided with upgraded transport to their destination and priority medical treatment at our finest facilities. Amy felt amazed that her simple words about being hungry had led to such big changes. Dr. Hayes squeezed her hand and whispered that she was proud of how brave Amy had been. The judge looked directly at Amy with his large glowing eyes. Young advocate Amy Collins, your honest declaration of need has taught our people something we had forgotten. Laws without compassion are not true justice. You have reminded us that taking care of others is more important than following rules perfectly. Over the following months, the changes Amy had started spread throughout Zephyrian society. The government created new departments to study alien cultures and needs. They redesigned their detention facilities to accommodate different types of beings. They trained cultural officers to help alien visitors understand Zephyrian customs, while making sure alien needs were respected. The Zephyrian people themselves began to change their attitudes toward other species. Amy's testimony had shown them that aliens were not just different versions of Zephyrians, but were completely different kinds of beings with their own valuable ways of thinking and living. Captain Morrison and his crew were given a new ship that was faster and more comfortable than their old one. All the passengers received free medical treatment at Zephyrian facilities before continuing to their original destinations. Amy's treatment was completely successful, and her genetic condition was cured using methods that combined human and Zephyrian medical knowledge. Dr. Hayes later testified before the Galactic Council about their experience. Her testimony helped create the Universal Rights of Detained Persons Act, which established minimum standards for how all member species must treat alien prisoners. The act became known throughout the galaxy as Amy's Law. Amy grew up to become a diplomatic liaison between human and Zephyrian governments. She often traveled between Earth and the Zephyrian worlds, helping to solve problems between the two species. Whenever she met young diplomats, she would tell them the story of how 3 simple words had changed everything. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is just tell the truth about what you need, she would say. Being honest about being scared or hungry or hurt is not weakness. It's how we connect with others and help them understand us. Judge Corthane became one of the most respected legal reformers in Zephyrian history. He often spoke at conferences about the day a human child taught him that real justice required not just following laws, but also understanding the beings those laws were meant to protect. Law without wisdom is just organized cruelty, he would tell young judges. We must always remember that behind every legal case are real beings with real needs and real feelings. Our job is to serve justice, not just enforce rules. The story of Amy's declaration spread throughout human space and became a source of pride for humanity. It showed that human directness and emotional honesty could bridge even the most difficult cultural gaps. Parents would tell their children about the brave girl who changed alien law by simply saying she was hungry. Years later, when Amy visited schools on Earth and human colonies, she would meet children who reminded her of herself at 12 years old. They would ask her if she had been scared when she spoke to the alien judge, and she would always answer honestly. Yes, I was very scared, she would tell them, but I was also hungry and sick and I needed help. Sometimes, when you really need something, you have to be brave enough to ask for it, even when you're scared. The children would always want to know what the aliens looked like, and whether they were mean or nice. Amy would explain that the Zephyrians were not mean, they were just different, and they had not understood what humans needed to be healthy and happy. The most important thing I learned, Amy would say, is that most beings in the galaxy want to do the right thing. But sometimes they need help understanding what the right thing is. That's why we have to be willing to teach each other. Amy's story became required reading in diplomatic schools throughout human space. Young people who wanted to work with alien species would study how her simple honesty had accomplished what years of formal negotiations had failed to achieve. The medical facility on Kepler 442b, where Amy finally received her treatment, became a symbol of cooperation between species. Human and Zephyrian doctors worked together, they're developing new treatments that combined the best knowledge from both civilizations. They named their research wing the Collins Center, in honor of the girl whose courage had made their cooperation possible. Even decades later, when Amy was an old woman with grandchildren of her own, she would sometimes receive messages from young Zephyrians who were studying human culture. They would thank her for teaching their people about human needs and customs. Some would tell her that her story had inspired them to become cultural liaisons or medical researchers. Amy always replied to these messages personally. She would tell the young Zephyrians that the most important lesson was not about humans or Zephyrians specifically, but about the power of honest communication between any beings who are trying to understand each other. When we tell the truth about what we need and how we feel, she would write, we give others the chance to help us. And when others help us, we learn that we are not alone in the galaxy. The Collins Doctrine continued to influence galactic law for generations. It established the principle that justice systems must be flexible enough to accommodate the needs of different species, while still maintaining order and fairness. Legal scholars would study Amy's case as an example of how individual courage could create systemic change. Judge Corthan remained friends with Amy throughout his long life. When he finally retired from the bench, he wrote a book about legal reform that dedicated an entire chapter to what he called the hunger that changed everything. In it, he wrote that Amy had taught him the difference between being right and being wise. Laws are made by imperfect beings trying to create perfect systems, he wrote. But wisdom comes from remembering that those systems must serve real beings with real needs. A 12-year-old human child reminded an entire civilization that compassion is not weakness but the foundation of true strength. Amy Collins had started her journey as a sick child hoping for medical treatment on an alien world. She ended it as a bridge between species and a symbol of how courage and honesty could overcome fear and misunderstanding. Her 3 simple words, "I'm really hungry," had proven that sometimes the most powerful speeches are also the most honest ones. The galaxy was a better place because one small human girl had been brave enough to tell the truth about what she needed. And that truth had opened hearts and minds across the stars, reminding everyone that beneath all their differences, all thinking beings shared the same basic needs for food and shelter, and kindness and hope.